are at the beautiful Upper Foys Lake. This is where we'll be spending our virtual field trip number 4 today. We'll be talking about some of the significant geological features of this area. Before we do that though, I want to talk a little bit about last week's field trip. We looked at some big sandy ridges, and we learned that they were wind deposited. And I'll bet most of you figured out that they are sand dunes that were deposited when the valley was devoid of vegetation right at the end of the Ice Age, and just covered with glacial till, full of silt and sand that was picked up by the wind and then deposited as the wind stopped up against the mountains. So good job. That was a fun one. And today we're going to talk about Foys Lake. Okay, so Upper Foys Lake is a rather large lake. It's the largest of the 3 Foys lakes. It's fairly deep, and it is surrounded by these tall ridges. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those ridges are made out of in just a minute. But first of all, I want to describe that these lakes, or at least this particular part of this canyon, was completely filled with ice during the Ice Age. You can see the back of Blacktail Mountain there with the clear cuts on it and just a tiny bit of snow still. Those mountains would have had ice right up to the top of them, and the glacier would have been an extension of the giant lobe of ice that came down and filled the Flathead Valley with 1 to 2 miles of ice. This would have grown up in here and filled this entire area with ice. And you know from all of your studies now that what glaciers do is they carve. And this glacier did a lot of carving in this area. It left these kidney-shaped and round lake depressions in them. And we'll see some more of those in just a little bit. And look at what the road is cut right through. I don't know if you can see that very well, but it's like a 100-foot wall of glacial till. In fact, all of the ridges around here are made of that glacial till. We're basically standing on one giant pile after another of glacial till. So here we are, Foys Lake. Just a little bit west of Kalispell. 3 beautiful gem lakes. This lake in particular has a wonderful cultural story behind it. But so how were these lakes formed? Tell me what kind of lakes they are. And tell me what the name of these giant ridges of gravel on all sides of the lake are. Let me tell you a little bit about the story behind this Upper Foys Lake. As you'll see from the following little snippets, the other Foys lakes, Lower Foys and Middle Lakes, are more like ponds, kind of swampy ponds, great places for birds to hang out. But Upper Foys, as you've seen, is quite deep. It's big enough to water ski on and boat on and fish on. There's lots of beautiful houses around the lake. And why is it so different? Years ago, quite a few years ago, 60, 80 years ago, Upper Foys looked a lot like those little ponds in Middle and Lower Foys. There's a man named Sam Bibler that bought a bunch of land around here. He was very civic-minded, and he looked at Upper Foys and he thought, that is too great of a place just to be a swampy pond. He knew the geologic history, and he decided that he would take that impression that Upper Foys was in, which was a swampy pond at that time, and he opened up the groundwater and let the entire basin fill with water, and it became the beautiful recreation spot that we know of today. And if he hadn't done that, it would still be sort of a swampy pond. Pretty good place for birds, but not so good for recreation. Okay, this is Middle Foys Lake. So this is probably what Upper Foys looked like before Sam Bibler brought the groundwater up. This is Lower Foys Lake. road is cut right through here. You'll recognize this. You become pros at recognizing what these big piles of gravel are. And look at this classic combination of sand, cobbles, huge boulders, and some nice little round rocks all mixed together. And notice that they're not sorted, which tells you exactly what it is. If it was a river deposit, all the heavy stuff would be on the bottom and the light stuff would be on the top. But this is all mixed up, which means it was deposited by what? Okay, Earth Science students, we're looking at another feature here. I don't think I need to tell you anymore what geological force is responsible for all this massive amounts of gravel and all the other topography that we're looking at today. So you can probably guess what has caused this feature. We've seen them in class, and now you have to figure out what they are. They're long gouges carved into the rock by other moving rocks carried by the ice. And the other question I have for you is, so what we're looking at are these gouges right here. And they're all over these rocks. They're a little bit harder to see, but this one is a really good one. It's nice and polished. So the other question is, what indication do they give you about the direction of the flow of the ice? Does the ice flow parallel to these gouges? Wait for the traffic to go by. Or does the ice flow perpendicular to these gouges? Give that some thought and let me know what you think these are. Okay, Earth Science student, I wanted to point out this giant pile of glacial till on the south side of Upper Foys Lake. Here's the lake, and here's the pile of glacial till. I'm standing far away because I wanted you to see the scale of it as compared to the cars in front of it. Oh, it's probably at least 100 feet deep, and we'll get a closer look at it in just a minute. Okay, here we are just a little bit closer, and as you can see, we're right at the entrance to Lone Pine State Park, and I wanted to show you that the road that goes up to Lone Pine State Park is a long, steady climb up that giant hill of gravel deposited by the glacier, that glacial till. It's a long hill, and here we are back at the face at the road cut.